I have a second channel, Cube Comp MTDX.
Hey everybody. In this video I'm going to veer off the topic of computers and technology just a little bit and talk about something totally different. Today I'm going to be talking about traffic signals, which in a way can be considered technology. So ever since I was a little kid I've always been fascinated by traffic signals. It was one thing I used to enjoy getting chauffeured around, going into town and seeing all the traffic lights. When I was a preteen or a teenager, my grandpa managed to get me a 8-inch LFE signal head. It's actually still at my parents' house, hanging up under the garage overhang. I've always loved traffic signals. It's been one of the things I've been interested in, and one of the many things I'm interested in. Yeah, when I was a young kid, I used to go into MS Paint and draw pictures of traffic signals and stitch them all together and make a fake working intersection and stuff like that. And in later years, during my late teens and early 20s, when I was out, of course, bike riding all the time, and I need to get back into that, once I found out how to trigger traffic signals on a bicycle, that was an interesting thing. But when I was a kid, there was one special kind of traffic signal that I was always amused by, and that's the T signal. It is a traffic signal head that has two reds up top, a single yellow and a single green. They used to be installed all across North Carolina. You would commonly find them in town on major highways and boulevards at single protected left turn signals. In any intersection that had a single left turn lane, you would typically have a traffic signal with two solid reds, a yellow arrow, and a green arrow, and an accompanying sign that says left turn signal. The reason why the North Carolina DOT used these types of traffic signals was because back then they were using incandescent lamps, and of course light bulbs burn out. And when you have a signal left turn signal head, they would have two reds there for redundancy. That way if one burnt out, you would still have one that would work. And this is important for any intersection that had a protected left turn signal. For protected left turn signals that had two left turn lanes, you would have two three-way heads with red, yellow, and green arrows. But at single left turn signal, at intersections with a single left turn lane, you would have the two solid reds and the yellow and green arrows. But around the year 2005, LED fixtures started to take over, and North Carolina DOT started replacing the incandescent lamps with LED fixtures. And thus redundancy was no longer required, so the double red left turn signals came down. And I tell you, it was a sad, sad time, I must say, because I'll tell you, the double red left turn signals, with the incandescent lamps, when they were red, they looked like they were staring right at you, almost like the traffic signal wanted to have a conversation with you while you were waiting in the driver's seat or passenger seat, waiting to make a left turn. It was always so funny. I must say it was sad when North Carolina DOT started taking these things out and replacing them with single three-way heads with a red, yellow, and green arrow. I must say the new traffic signals are quite boring. So I grew up in Gaston County, North Carolina, and one of the things I love about going to Gastonia was seeing all those double red left turn signals on Franklin Boulevard, and also seeing them in parts of Louisville and places like that. They were everywhere in Gaston County. You would find them in Belmont, you would find them in Mount Holly, you would find them in Gastonia, you would find them in Randlow, Lowell, places like that. They were everywhere. And then in 2005, North Carolina DOT started replacing them with signal red left turn signals with an arrow. And there's no telling how much money they spent doing this. I mean, just intersection after intersection after intersection, they were replacing the double red signals left and right. And most of them were being replaced with McCain signal heads. And if you look on Street View, and I'm going to actually include some Street View in this video, you'll see at these intersections, pretty easy to tell the intersections that were retrofitted, where they had they replaced the T signals with the standard left turn signal with a red arrow. You would, on these intersections, you would notice the left turn signal head looked different. That's because it was a McCain head, whereas the other ones were probably Mark IVs or other different brands of signals that they used to use. So yeah, I must say it was unfortunate to see that happen, in my opinion. And do I think it was reasonable? Well, I'll talk about that later in the video. Some cities, however, like Charlotte and Winston-Salem, who operate their own traffic signals, they kept some of their intersections with the double red signals around until about 2007, 2009. And that was when they started taking them out. So when you look on Google Street View, the earliest Street View, at least in this area, is roughly from 2007. In some areas 2008. And most areas where the NCDOT operates the signals, by this point they have already replaced the signals, the double red T signals, with single red traffic signals for left turn. But in areas like Charlotte and Winston-Salem, there were still many of these intersections up and running, and you can actually see them in Street View. But while North Carolina phased out these signals in the mid to late 2000s, South Carolina DOT, however, continues to use these signals at some intersections. In fact, they still install these at some new intersections. For example, if I drive down into South Carolina, even just crossing the state line near where Carowinds is, you'll find intersections with the double red T signals still in operation. Now, in South Carolina, they do things a little differently. South Carolina used to have the two solid reds on theirs, but recently they started replacing the solid reds with two red arrows, which makes sense. That way they don't have to have the left turn signal signage there. So the arrows replace the need for the left turn signal signage. When you have two red balls, or two solid reds, they have to have an accompanying sign that says left turn signal. So that way somebody who isn't familiar with the intersection would know, okay, this particular signal over here is for left turn, move its only. So here we're looking at an illustration of what a T signal intersection would look like back in the before 2005 in North Carolina. You would have your T signal with two solid reds and an accompanying sign. In this particular sequence is a lead lag. As you see, both the left turn and straight through were both green, and we're actually not getting any lag this time because let's just say there was no cars on the other side, so the other side is now going. So that gives you a general idea of what things look like. And again, it was in my opinion, it's very unfortunate that they got replaced in 2005, roughly. So here is a different example of the same intersection, but this is going to be both left turn lanes going at the same time on both sides, I mean. And once it turns red, straight through we get to go. Pretty much the same thing. And one thing you'll notice right away, even just from my little animation here, is the red is very noticeable on the T signal in this style installation. Unlike a standard arrow, the two reds really get your attention, and I think that's very important in today's society where you have many distracted drivers out there. So in mid-2000s, North Carolina DOT replaced most of, if not all, the left turn T signals with this style turn signal. It's just a standard three-way signal head with a red arrow. And as you may see, the red arrow is just, in my opinion, not quite as noticeable. Now, in real life, the red arrow is bright and it will get your attention, but in my opinion, and this is not just my opinion, the double reds are more noticeable. And here's an example of a typical South Carolina installation with a T signal. You have two red arrows instead of just one. So you have the redundancy and you have something there to get driver's attention a little bit better. And this one is allowing both protected lefts to go at the same time. And now the straight through traffic is getting to go. So yeah, you'll find these throughout parts of South Carolina, even in newer installations. So meanwhile, South Carolina continued using this style traffic signal head, and even kept installing it in some new intersections for a good reason. The T signal, in my opinion, offers more than just redundancy, as far as being a fail-safe design. If one fixture goes out, the other still is going. But in today's society with distracted drivers, I think it's a brilliant idea to have the red be more noticeable. It's just like in the old days when they were installing 1288 signal heads, where you had the big 12-inch red and the 8-inch yellow and green. The red was bigger because they wanted the red to be more noticeable. Well, the T signal in 12-inch form, you have two reds. And in the case of having two solid reds, it's very noticeable. And especially if you retrofit with LEDs, then it's really noticeable. And in fact, North Carolina is that in some areas, such as Raleigh, and then also I think Winston-Salem, they're actually bringing these signals back. Not exactly as left turn signals, but they're actually utilizing the T signal heads for straight through intersections. And from what I've researched, they actually did see a reduction in T-bone crashes, because having two reds is better than one. And while LED fixtures are much more reliable than incandescent, failures, they still happen. Not exactly very often, but they still happen sometimes. I have actually seen LED fixtures fail. As a matter of fact, the earlier ones, typically you would see some LEDs. The ones that had just a bunch of LEDs in a cluster, a lot of times you would see some LEDs burn out and quit working, whereas some were still working. But with newer style LED fixtures that mimic the look of incandescent, I've seen them go completely out before. I've seen the arrows fail, and I've seen the solids fail. It happens. So in a way, redundancy is still needed, and that's why that's always been why traffic signals typically have, for at least for example, with a regular signal, you always see two signal heads, not just one, because in case one goes out, the other's there still to work. So I think South Carolina DOT's "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" attitude has played off very well here. In my opinion, there was no reason to have to replace all of these T signals with standard signals when they could just retrofit them with LEDs and call it a day. Because in a way, in my opinion, for intersections that only have one left turn lane and it's a protected left turn signal, it's still important the red phase is still important and should be most noticeable and should also have a failsafe. So it's going to take some time to look through some stuff I found on Google Street View. Here you're looking at an intersection in Charlotte where one of the reds in the T signal is actually burnt out, and this is the redundancy part. These were running on incandescent lamps, and of course old-fashioned light bulbs, they burn out pretty often. And having two is better than one in this case. So that way, when one burns out, the other should still be there to act as a backup. And here's the same intersection retrofitted with a standard single red arrow left turn signal. And you can see they have left the existing left turn signal sign in place, which I think eventually did get taken out in later years. Okay, so now we're looking at Winston-Salem. Not all intersections out there, while most of them do have the accompanying left turn signal sign, there were some that were actually missing the sign. And in my opinion, it wasn't really too big of a deal because most drivers around then, they knew what that signal meant. It's on the far left, had two reds. It typically meant you had to stop and wait for it to turn green before you could make a left turn. And here's another one, same deal. In Winston-Salem, missing the sign. Here's another intersection in Winston-Salem. You can see this one does have the sign. Another Winston-Salem signal. Another intersection. Another intersection in Winston-Salem. What's funny is if you look at this one, look at the right red on this one. It looks funny, in my opinion. Yeah, these things look like a face looking right at you. Now get this, here's an intersection that was retrofitted with LEDs, and they kept the existing T signals in place. So this one was retrofitted with LEDs. Here's another look at it. And you can see here's a look at the red. Two solid reds, and you can clearly tell they're LED. Here's another look at it. Okay guys, now we're in Charlotte. And here's an interesting find. This was taken in 2009. And this was when Google started to use something better than the equivalent of a flip phone camera for their street view. This was on Highway 74, Wilkinson Boulevard. This intersection no longer exists. They actually ripped it out when they redone the road here in recent years. And you can clearly see the T signals on both sides. Here's another look at it, and if you look carefully at the T signal, it looks like it has pupils and it's two reds. That was the funny thing about when these were running on incandescent lamps. You know, it had the light bulb in the center like a little pupil. And that's why these things, in my opinion, look like faces staring right at you when they're red. Here's another look at the same intersection. I can just think in the back of my mind looking at this one, it's like saying, you stay right there. Same intersection. Same intersection again. Now, it looks like the T signal on this side was retrofitted with LEDs because those look a lot brighter. For the most part, Charlotte went straight from incandescents to newer style LED fixtures that mimicked incandescents. Now, in the mid-2000s, when Charlotte was installing, or at least at intersections that were installed around 2005 in Charlotte, they were using the earlier style fixtures that had the cluster of separate LEDs. But Charlotte, they didn't really. There were still many intersections in Charlotte that were running on incandescent lamps. Matter of fact, there was one at Harris Boulevard and Statesville Road that I remember using incandescents on some signal heads up until like 2013, or if not later. Here's an intersection in Ballantyne. Okay, so here we're looking in Gaston County at some intersections that were retrofitted, where the double red T signals were replaced with single left turn signal heads. This looks to be a Hudson Boulevard. You can see the rest of these signals on the right look to be Econo lights, but the far left we have McCain. Yeah, North Carolina DOT, it's like McCain signals were their signal had a choice back in the mid-2000s for replacing these T signals. Most of the replacement heads were McCain's. Here's another look at that same intersection. Here you can see the back of the signals. Back of the signals again. You can clearly tell the McCain looks a lot different. Okay, here's a different intersection. You can see that the on the backs of the signals here, the two left ones are Eagle Mark IVs, and on the right you have the McCain. I think it's the same intersection again. I think this is a different intersection here. You can clearly see, same deal. Replace the old T signal with a McCain. Standard head. Blah. Boring. Okay, this here is near Eastridge Mall. Same deal. Another look at the same intersection. Another entrance to Eastridge Mall. I remember back in the day, I remember this intersection back when it had double reds. I remember a lot of these intersections back when it had double reds. Because I tell you, my mom, she used to shop at this mall all the time. This is my childhood mall, and it's sad to say that it's a dead mall. It's not doing too well right now. A lot of its anchor stores, including Sears, have closed. We have two old LFE signals, and on the far right we have a Mark IV replacement for the former T signal. I tell you, North Carolina was very swift about replacing these T signal heads with the standard heads. they were quick, and I'm sure they spent quite a bit of our taxpayer money on this too. Different photo here. Different photo. You can see the McCain on the far left. Yep, this is at Franklin Square. And what's funny is, like, this one here is almost like they went into their storage building and pulled out an old signal and installed some LED arrows in it and tossed it up there on the wire. Because it's older than the other Mark IV heads at this intersection. This intersection was probably installed in 1993. That's when this part of Franklin Square was built. I used to remember looking at the back of that T signal when me and my mom would go to Chick-fil-A, and we would sit out in the parking lot and eat and look at that T signal. And it was for a U-turn, so it rarely ever turned green, but it was still funny to look at. In the Popeyes there used to be a Burger King. Okay, so now we're in Mount Holly. This is at Highway 27, and you can clearly tell this intersection used to be. One way you can tell these intersections in North Carolina. You can tell if they had T signals at one point, whereas it's simply by a lot of times you can tell by the replacement signal head being different than the other signal heads, but also sometimes they will not take down the left turn signal sign that used to accompany the solid 2 red T signal. Here's another photo, same intersection. Another photo of this intersection. So yeah. I think that sums up for all my Street View stuff. But yeah, interesting observation. I must say, there's lots of nostalgia looking at some of these intersections. Although they've been upgraded, it just I can remember back when they were still using their original T signal heads. It was always so entertaining to me, sitting in the passenger seat. And we'd be waiting at this intersection, looking up at this thing. There's 2 incandescent red lamps looking right at you like it's staring at you. So, yeah, I must say, it's the new style signals are boring. They're boring, but also in practicality, I think the new signals, in comparison to the T signals, the red is not quite as noticeable. It's also around the mid-2000s, parts of the state, North Carolina, started to experiment with and started using the flashing yellow arrow left turn signal. This is similar to the current style protected signal. Instead, it has a 4th section. You would have a single red, a solid yellow arrow, a flashing yellow arrow, and a green arrow. I think Charlotte was the first part of the state to start using this signal. And of course, Charlotte operates their own signals. And then around 2010, North Carolina DOT, the areas where they manage traffic signals, such as Huntersville, around 2010 they started installing these signals at intersections, and they were essentially a replacement for the old style cluster or doghouse signal. So instead of having a green ball and a green arrow, you would have the green arrow, a flashing yellow arrow in one section, a solid yellow arrow, and a solid red arrow. And in recent years, the MUTCD removed the requirement of having a 4th section for that flashing yellow arrow. So Charlotte DOT, for example, at some new intersections or retrofits, they now use a left turn signal that looks just like a standard protected left turn signal, except the green section can also be a flashing yellow. So it can be green one moment, and then the solid yellow will come on and go red, or go from solid yellow to flashing yellow. And that got me to thinking, why can they not combine the new technology of the flashing yellow arrow into the old T signal head? Now that the MUTCD now allows the green section to also operate as a flashing yellow, why couldn't they combine the T signal with that? You would get the redundancy, 2 solid reds or 2 red arrows if you want to do it the NCDOT way. You would have the 2 reds for redundancy, and also to get people's attention better. Because, again, in today's society, people are not paying as much attention to the road, and it's sad, but true. And I think that left turn signals, anytime the thing is red, it needs to be well noticed. Yeah, just a single red arrow, in my opinion, just doesn't cut it. I think there should be two reds. So here's an example of an intersection using what I'm talking about here. You can see we had the T signal, and we have an accompanying sign that says left turn signal, and also mentions yield on flashing. It goes red, and now watch this. It's going to operate as a flashing yellow. That way people can yield to oncoming traffic to make a left turn. It makes sense in my opinion. And you can see we're operating in a lead lag scenario here. What's nice about this design is it can operate as a conventional protected left turn signal, but also operate as a permissive with the flashing yellow arrow. And here's another example of it operating. Instead of getting a protected left, it's going to show a permissive. And I think this is actually a lag lead scenario. It'll actually turn green here in just a moment to offer a protected left. You see it just turned green, and drivers can now make a left turn without having to yield, and now the whole thing's going to turn red. It makes sense. It combines the redundancy of the reds, but also the safety of the flashing yellow. And now we're going to look at a second example of this. In this example, it's going to be both left turn lanes on each side. The turn lanes on each side going at the same time. Left turn, protected left is now ending. And now drivers can yield to traffic. And now the whole intersection's about to turn red. Now, in this example, let's see if we have a crosswalk on the left here, and we have a, okay, so now drivers have a protected left, it's ending, and now the signal is going to stay red a bit longer, and now the crosswalk is going to show the little walking man. Pedestrians can now cross safely, and now the crosswalk is counting down, and the left turn signal is now allowing permissive left turns. Charlotte DOT is currently experimenting with this kind of scenario. So yeah, pretty straightforward I think. It makes sense in my opinion. So overall, in review, NCDOT, they replaced all these left turn signal heads, the T signals, they replaced them all with standard three-way signal heads. In my opinion, that's a waste of money. Because not only, I think, in my opinion, it was unnecessary. I think they should have just replaced the fixtures, the incandescent lamps, they should have replaced them with LED fixtures and kept the existing double reds in service, because not only do these style signal heads offer a failsafe, because LEDs are not perfect either, they do fail sometimes, but having two reds is better than one. And I think the South Carolina DOT made a good move by keeping it simple and not spending lots of taxpayer money on replacing all these traffic signals and giving up a nice safety feature. So anyways, feel free to let me know what you think in the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Well guys, that's it for this one. But it doesn't have to be. There's plenty more videos on the channel to check out. Also, if you liked the video, please click the like button. And if you absolutely hated it, there is the alternative button as well. But yeah, please subscribe to the channel. I definitely appreciate it. And remember to click the bell so that we get notified of all updates. Also, if you're interested in things aside from computers and technology, check out my second channel. It's Cube Comp MTDX. Over there you'll find videos about weather, elevators, bicycling, and pretty much whatever else I figure out to upload. So yeah, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you for your support.